The upscale Italian restaurant hummed with the soft conversation of successful people celebrating my father's 58th birthday. Salvatore's had been Dad's favorite restaurant for decades, the kind of place where city councilmen made deals over expensive wine and business leaders celebrated major contracts with handmade pasta and imported olive oil. 32 members of the Williams family occupied the private dining room, everyone dressed in their finest evening wear for the patriarch's special day. The long mahogany table gleamed under the warm chandelier light, set with crystal glasses and silver cutlery that caught the flicker of the candles scattered throughout the room. I sat at the far end of the table in my simple black dress, methodically cutting my chicken marsala while my family performed their usual symphony of success stories. My older brother Marcus held court near Dad's right hand, regaling everyone with tales of his latest promotion to managing director at the city's premier law firm. My sister Jessica commanded attention from the middle of the table, describing her husband's orthopedic practice and their upcoming vacation to the French Riviera. Meanwhile, I focused on my dinner and tried to remain invisible. The irony wasn't lost on me. In exactly 47 minutes, the financial markets would close on the East Coast, and Neuralink Systems would officially go public at a valuation of $4.2 billion. The company I'd built in my garage 7 years ago, the little tech project my family had been dismissing for nearly a decade, was about to make me one of the youngest female billionaires in American history. But tonight wasn't about Neuralink Systems or initial public offerings or revolutionary artificial intelligence platforms. Tonight was about celebrating Daniel Williams, the self-made construction magnate who'd built Williams & Associates into one of the region's most successful development companies. And then the city council voted unanimously to approve our downtown project, Marcus was saying, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. 18 months of legal work, but we secured the permits for the largest mixed-use development in the city's history. Applause rippled around the table. Dad beamed with pride, raising his wine glass in salute to his successful son. "That's my boy," Dad declared, his voice warm with paternal satisfaction. "Chip off the old block. You've got the Williams drive, Marcus. The ability to see opportunity where others see obstacles." More applause. More validation of the Williams family success story. "And Jessica," Dad continued, turning to my sister, "tell everyone about Kevin's new practice expansion." Jessica practically glowed under the attention. "Kevin's opening a second location next month. The sports medicine clinic has been so successful that he's bringing in 2 additional partners. We're looking at purchasing a larger house to accommodate all the entertaining we'll need to do." "Outstanding." Dad's pride was infectious, spreading around the table like warmth from a fireplace. "That's what I'm talking about. Building something, expanding, always moving forward. That's the Williams way." I took another bite of my chicken and checked my phone discreetly. A text from my chief financial officer. "Trading opens strong. Price already up 23% from opening bell. Congratulations, you're officially a billionaire." I typed back quickly, "Thanks. Keep monitoring. No press statements until tomorrow." "Alexandra," Aunt Patricia's voice cut through my thoughts. I looked up to find my father's sister smiling at me with the kind of gentle concern usually reserved for sick pets. "You've been so quiet tonight. How are things going with your computer work?" The question landed on the table like a stone dropped in still water. 32 pairs of eyes focused on me, waiting for an update on the family disappointment's latest attempt at finding direction in life. "It's going well," I said simply, taking a sip of water. Marcus's laugh cut through the polite silence. "Going well? Aunt Patricia, Alexandra has been saying her computer thing is going well for 7 years. Meanwhile, she's still living in that same apartment and driving that same Honda from college." The familiar sting of public humiliation washed over me. Around the table, successful Williams family members regarded me with a mixture of pity and mild embarrassment. "Now, Marcus," Mom interjected weakly, "I'm sure Alexandra is doing her best." "Her best at what?" Marcus pressed, clearly enjoying his role as the successful brother, highlighting the family failure. "She won't tell anyone what she actually does all day. Won't explain how she pays her bills. Won't admit that whatever she's been working on for 7 years has produced exactly nothing." The silence grew heavier. I could feel the weight of their expectations, their disappointment, their gentle concern for the daughter who couldn't seem to find her way. I work in artificial intelligence, I said quietly. I develop software that helps companies automate complex processes. Artificial intelligence, Jessica repeated with the tone someone might use when discussing unicorns. Like robots. Like algorithms that can analyze data patterns and make predictive decisions, I explained. Supply chain optimization, resource allocation, predictive maintenance systems. The glazed expressions around the table told me I'd lost them at algorithms. That sounds very complicated, Aunt Patricia said kindly. But is it actually a business? I mean, do companies pay you for this? Before I could answer, Marcus jumped back in. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? 7 years of developing software and working with artificial intelligence, but somehow Alexandra can't afford to move out of her college apartment or buy a car that doesn't need repairs every month. Marcus, Dad's voice carried a warning tone, but it was the kind of warning that said, be gentle with your struggling sister, rather than stop attacking your successful sister. I'm just saying, Dad, at some point we need to face reality. Alexandra is 30 years old. She's been playing around with computers since college, and what does she have to show for it? No house, no car, no husband, no kids, no visible income. Each item on the list felt like a physical blow. 32 family members listening to my older brother systematically catalog my failures at Dad's birthday dinner. That's enough, Dad said, but his tone lacked conviction. Around the table, I could see family members nodding subtly in agreement with Marcus's assessment. Is it enough, though? Marcus pressed. Because we all just sit here pretending that Alexandra's hobby is going to magically turn into a career while she gets older and falls further behind. When are we going to have an honest conversation about her situation? What situation? I asked quietly, though I already knew the answer. Your situation, Marcus said with the brutal honesty that only family members can deliver. The situation where you're 30 years old with no real job, no real prospects, and no real plan for the future. The situation where you're living like a college student while the rest of us are building careers and families. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Maybe, Jessica added with sisterly concern, it's time to consider something more practical. You're obviously smart, Alexandra. You could do well in a traditional career if you just applied yourself. Traditional career. Code for, give up your dreams and get a real job. What Jessica means, Dad said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used when solving family problems, is that you have options, Alexandra. Good options. Marcus could probably get you an interview at his firm for a paralegal position. Jessica knows people in healthcare administration. I have connections in project management and business development. Project management. After building artificial intelligence systems that had revolutionized how 17 Fortune 500 companies managed their operations, my father thought I should consider project management. The point is, Dad continued, you don't have to keep struggling with this computer thing. You can have a real career with real benefits, real security. You can still be part of the Williams success story. Still be part of. As if I'd ever been part of it in the first place. My phone buzzed. Another text from my CFO. CNBC wants an interview about the IPO. Stock price up 34% since opening. This is historic. I glanced around the table at 32 family members who were discussing my future like I wasn't sitting right there. They were trying to save me from my delusions, guide me toward respectability, help me find a place in the real world. They had no idea I'd just become worth $2.1 billion in the past 6 hours. I appreciate everyone's concern, I said carefully, but I'm committed to my current work. Committed to what? Dad's patience was clearly wearing thin. Alexandra, what are you actually committed to? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're committed to avoiding responsibility. The accusation hit like a slap. Around the table, family members shifted uncomfortably, but no one disagreed. Dad, I started. No, let me finish, Dad interrupted, his voice rising slightly. For 7 years, I've watched you drift through life with no direction, no ambition, no drive to succeed. Do you think I built Williams and Associates by sitting in my apartment playing with computers? Do you think Marcus became managing director by avoiding real work? Do you think Jessica married a successful doctor by chasing fantasy careers? Each question was a deliberate blow, designed to highlight the contrast between my failures and their achievements. You want to know the truth? Dad continued, building momentum. I'm embarrassed by you, Alexandra. I'm embarrassed that when people ask about my children, I have to explain that 2 of them are incredibly successful while the third one is still figuring things out at 30 years old. The silence that followed was absolute. 32 people watching a father publicly destroy his daughter at his own birthday party. You're the family failure, Dad announced, his words carrying across the private dining room with devastating clarity. Everyone else is successful except you. Marcus built a legal career. Jessica married well and contributed to her community. But you've spent a decade hiding in your apartment, pretending that playing with computers is somehow equivalent to building a real life. I stayed quiet and kept eating, mechanically cutting another piece of chicken while my family watched the verbal execution. I'm done making excuses for you, Dad concluded. I'm done pretending that your hobby is a career. I'm done apologizing to my friends when they ask why one of my children can't seem to grow up. The words settled over the table like ash after a fire. Marcus looked satisfied. Jessica appeared uncomfortable but not disagreeable. Mom stared at her plate, unable to meet my eyes. That's when the television mounted in the corner of the dining room suddenly got louder. The evening news had been playing softly in the background, ignored by everyone focused on family conversation and birthday celebrations. But now the volume seemed to increase, or maybe the room had just gotten quiet enough for everyone to hear. This is Channel 7 News with breaking financial news. The anchor's voice cut through the stunned silence of our family dinner. In a historic market debut, Neuralink Systems has completed its initial public offering with a valuation of $4.2 billion, making it one of the largest tech IPOs in regional history. Every head in the dining room turned toward the television. The artificial intelligence company, founded 7 years ago, has revolutionized supply chain optimization and predictive analytics for major corporations worldwide, the anchor continued. The IPO price opened at $28 per share and has climbed to $41 in after-hours trading, representing a market capitalization of approximately $4.2 billion. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The company's mysterious founder and CEO, previously known only by initials, has been revealed as local resident Alexandra Williams, the anchor said, and suddenly my professional headshot filled the screen. At 30 years old, Williams becomes one of the youngest female billionaires in American history. The entire restaurant went silent. Not just our private dining room. The entire restaurant. Every conversation stopped. Every fork paused halfway to every mouth. 50 people in the main dining room turned to stare at the television showing my face under the headline, "Local Woman Becomes Billionaire." Williams, a Stanford graduate with a PhD in computer science, built Neuralink Systems from her garage apartment, developing proprietary artificial intelligence algorithms that have transformed how Fortune 500 companies manage complex operations. The news continued, seemingly oblivious to the chaos it was causing in Salvatore's Italian restaurant. In our private dining room, 32 family members sat frozen in various poses of shock and disbelief. Marcus's wine glass was suspended halfway to his lips. Jessica's mouth had fallen open. Dad stared at the television like it was displaying instructions in a foreign language. The company's client list includes major corporations such as Amazon, Microsoft, General Electric, and Boeing, the anchor continued. Neuralink's AI systems have reportedly saved these companies billions of dollars in operational efficiencies over the past 5 years. Aunt Patricia made a sound that wasn't quite a gasp and wasn't quite a sob. Williams, who has maintained a notably private profile during her company's rapid growth, will retain majority ownership following the IPO, with her personal stake valued at approximately $2.1 billion, the news anchor concluded. She is expected to address the media tomorrow morning at a press conference announcing Neuralink's expansion plans. The news segment ended, transitioning to a story about local traffic patterns, but nobody in Salvatore's was listening anymore. In the main dining room, 50 people were still staring at our private party, trying to process what they'd just heard. The woman who'd been publicly called a family failure 30 seconds ago was apparently worth over $2 billion. In our private dining room, 32 family members continued their frozen tableau of shock. The silence stretched on until it became almost unbearable. Finally, Marcus found his voice. "Alexandra." It came out as barely more than a whisper. That was you on the television?" I nodded calmly, taking another sip of water. Neuralink systems? Jessica's voice cracked slightly. That's your computer work? That's my artificial intelligence company, yes. $4 billion? Dad's voice was so quiet I could barely hear him. $4.2 billion market capitalization as of market close, I confirmed. Though it's been fluctuating throughout the day. Uncle Robert, who hadn't spoken all evening, suddenly cleared his throat. Alexandra, are you saying you own a company worth $4 billion? I own 51% of a company that went public today at a $4.2 billion valuation, I clarified. My personal stake is worth approximately $2.1 billion, assuming the stock price remains stable. The math was simple enough that even the non-business people at the table could follow it. Alexandra Williams, the family failure, was worth more than everyone else at the table combined. Multiplied by about 50. But, Mom finally found her voice, you live in that little apartment. You drive that old Honda. You never said anything about being successful. I live modestly because I've been reinvesting everything back into the company, I explained. Rapid growth requires significant capital investment. Expensive cars and large houses seemed counterproductive when I was trying to scale operations. Scale operations, Marcus repeated numbly. Your little tech project was scaling operations. My artificial intelligence company was scaling operations, I corrected gently. The distinction seemed to physically impact him. He set down his wine glass with shaking hands. Amazon. Jessica's voice was barely audible. Microsoft? You work with Amazon and Microsoft. Among others. Neuralink's predictive analytics systems help them optimize inventory management and supply chain logistics. We've reduced their operational costs by an average of 23% across all client implementations. The technical details seem to make everything more surreal rather than less. Alexandra, Dad said slowly like he was talking to a stranger, are you telling us you're a billionaire? As of today's market close, yes. The simple acknowledgement hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. But why didn't you tell us? Aunt Patricia asked, her voice full of confusion. Why let us think you were struggling? The question I'd been dreading for years. When was I supposed to tell you? I asked quietly. During Marcus's speeches about how I needed to face reality? During Jessica's suggestions that I consider healthcare administration? During Dad's lectures about avoiding responsibility? The words hit the table like individual stones. For 7 years, I continued, my voice remaining calm despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Every family gathering has been an opportunity for all of you to explain why my life choices were wrong. Why I needed to give up my computer hobby and get a real job. Why I needed to stop chasing fantasies and accept reality. I picked up my water glass, surprised to find my hand was completely steady. The reality is that while you were all giving me career advice, I was building one of the fastest growing technology companies in America. While you were worried about my future, I was creating jobs for over 3,000 people. While you were discussing my failures, I was developing systems that revolutionized how major corporations operate. The silence that followed was different from the earlier shock. This was the silence of people realizing they had fundamentally misunderstood something important. Dad, I said, looking directly at the man who had just called me a family failure, you said you were embarrassed when people asked about your children because 2 of them were successful and 1 was still figuring things out. Dad's face had gone pale. What you didn't know is that when people in the tech industry ask about Neuralink systems, they're asking about me. When business journals write about the most innovative AI companies, they're writing about my work. When Fortune 500 CEOs discuss operational efficiency breakthroughs, they're discussing my algorithms. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin beside my barely touched plate. Tonight, you called me the family failure in front of 32 people, I continued. You said everyone else was successful except me. You said you were done making excuses for my hobby. Dad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The truth is, Dad, I've been more successful than anyone else at this table for the past 5 years. I just never needed your validation to know it. I picked up my small purse and walked around the table to where Dad sat, still frozen in shock. Happy birthday, I said, leaning down to kiss his forehead. I hope 58 brings you everything you're looking for. As I walked toward the door, I could hear voices rising behind me. Marcus demanding explanations, Jessica asking impossible questions, Mom calling my name with a voice full of panic and confusion. But I didn't turn around. I walked through the main dining room of Salvatore's, past 50 people who were still staring at me with recognition and awe. The maitre d' actually bowed slightly as I passed, having clearly connected the woman leaving the private party with the billionaire CEO from the news. I got in my reliable 10-year-old Honda and drove home to my modest apartment, where I would spend the rest of the evening reviewing IPO performance reports and preparing for tomorrow's press conference. Because that's what Alexandra Williams, the family failure, did with her evenings. My phone was already lighting up with notifications. Missed calls from family members, congratulations from business partners, interview requests from major media outlets. The world wanted to talk to the mysterious CEO who'd just become a billionaire. But all I could think about was the look on Dad's face when he realized his family failure had just proven him spectacularly wrong in front of everyone who mattered. I parked in my usual spot and looked up at my apartment building, the same building I'd lived in for 7 years while building Neuralink systems. Tomorrow, reporters would probably come here looking for the billionaire CEO's secret luxury lifestyle. They'd be disappointed to find a woman who lived simply, worked constantly, and measured success by innovation rather than ostentation. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Congratulations on the IPO. Press conference prep meeting at 7 a.m. Also, your father called the office 37 times in the past hour. Should I add him to your priority contact list? I smiled and typed back, not yet. Let's see if he figures out how to apologize first. The next morning would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new responsibilities that came with being a public company CEO. The press would want to know about my story, my vision, my plans for the future. The business world would want to understand how a woman working from her garage apartment had revolutionized artificial intelligence applications. But tonight, for the first time in 7 years, I was free to be exactly who I was. Alexandra Williams, successful entrepreneur, technology innovator, and former family failure who had just proven that sometimes the people who know you best understand you least. And I was completely, utterly at peace with that. Through my apartment window, the city spread out below me, filled with lights from office buildings where Neuralink systems were optimizing operations for companies around the world. Somewhere out there, algorithms I'd written were saving corporations millions of dollars, creating efficiencies that hadn't existed before I'd started typing code in this very apartment. In a few hours, markets would open in Asia and Neuralink stock would begin trading internationally. Financial analysts would debate the company's future potential. Tech journalists would speculate about my expansion plans. But right now, in the quiet of my apartment, I was just Alexandra Williams, the woman who'd built something extraordinary while her family thought she was failing at life. And tomorrow I would show the world exactly what that something could become.